Welcome to episode 4 of Settling's Not an Option. I'm Adam Nebbs and I'm here with my co-host Amanda Stanhope. This show is for anyone out there who feels they've settled for an unfulfilling life. Whether you've settled in a relationship, the work that you do, or how you feel about yourself, we're here to tell you that settling's not an option. If you are not new to the show and enjoying it, please follow us on Spotify or subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd also love to get any feedback, or if you're so inclined, you can donate to us on Coffee and help us get some better audio equipment. So far on the show, we've heard stories from Amanda, myself, and talked about ego. But this week we have our first guest, which I'm super excited about. So Lydia Willig is a yoga teacher, Reiki practitioner, and breath coach who lives in rural Maryland. Lydia is a personal coach who believes that healthy people equals a healthy planet, which I love. And she recently started her own podcast called The Wandering Yogi, which we'll leave a link to at the end of the show. So we definitely recommend you jump on and have a listen to that as well. So welcome to the show, Lydia.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So in true S&O style, can you tell us about your journey and how you chose not to settle for an unfulfilling life?
Yeah, I love it. We're just starting off right into the deep stuff. I'm all about it.
We don't mess around here.
No. Yeah, I think this topic is so important. I love this question because I feel like in my life, especially right now, I'm in this season where I'm really realizing that settling isn't an option and I'm not okay with being complacent, and I'm ready to kind of rise into my full potential and help other people do the same. So I love that this is coming up right now, and it's, I think, a really global conversation happening right now as well, which is so important. I know from my personal experience, I kind of felt from a really young age that there were a lot of societal expectations coming in and just kind of this strict timeline of what my life was supposed to look like that I didn't really agree with. So there was a lot of me kind of grappling with these things that I thought I was supposed to do, this life that I thought I was supposed to lead. And for me personally, that led to this real kind of intense need for control, which then led me into developing an eating disorder, which
wow. Okay.
Yeah, I would never, wish that on anyone. It was a tough journey, but it did really lead me to where I am now. And I'm grateful for the lessons I learned through that. So it really brought me to yoga in the first place. While I was in recovery from that, I found yoga, and it was one of those instant gut tug kind of things. Yep. I knew immediately this was my thing, this was my calling. And that literally changed my life. So
no, I can imagine. Yeah.
Right. So ever since I found yoga, that's what I decided I wanted to do. And, at the time that I found yoga, I was in college studying photography. I got my degree in art, not really using it, but that's fine.
Yep.
And that was really part of me not settling too, was just realizing and accepting that transition of, I studied this for 4 years, I put in the work, and now I'm being called somewhere else, and that's okay. And it's going to be so much more fulfilling if I follow that path. So that's really kind of how I came to where I am now.
And that's really crazy to me that it happened to you at such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
So, and obviously the eating disorder played into it, and I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's obviously a very vulnerable area and not something that's easy to share. So how were you introduced to yoga?
Mm-hmm.
Or who introduced you to it?
Good question. I think it's so important to talk vulnerably about things like eating disorders and mental health, especially now we're seeing people developing these mental illnesses earlier and earlier, younger and younger.
Yeah.
So I know that I'm not an exceptional case in any way, that was kind of my path leading to yoga. And that's kind of part of what drives me in the work I do now, for sure, having been through that, and again, not wanting anyone else to have to go through that.
Sure.
So while I was in college, I had just come out of treatment for my eating disorder, and now I'm being thrown into this completely new setting where I didn't know anyone, and I went to college out of state, so it was a really new experience for me. And I really, really struggled during my first year of college. I just my mental health kind of slipped back down the drain, and I didn't really know what to do. So luckily I had really great support systems in place, and I was able to kind of pick myself out of that hole that I had slipped back down into. And right during that time where I was recovering, I ended up in a yoga class, which was so kind of serendipitous. I was part of an environmental club in college, and that was kind of the first group of people that I felt were my people. And through that organization, we did a little private yoga class just for our group. And the instructor, I'm going to shout her out. Her name is B. Creel. I still, follow her and practice with her and love her so much. But she was my first teacher, and she really kind of opened her arms to me and let me kind of sneak into her yoga classes at 6:30 in the morning. And she really facilitated the first part of my journey through yoga and inspired me to kind of follow in her footsteps and teach yoga and spread, all the healing that I had gained from the practice. So it really was kind of this evolution of ending up in that yoga class with B, getting to take her classes, and then being so obsessed with yoga that it just became my life.
Right. That's just awesome. I just love hearing that.
I love this. Like it's crazy. Like the point that you made before, which I really liked, was the gut tug, I suppose, that you get into yoga and it just felt right. Could you unpack a little bit more? Because I'm really interested in this idea of the universe placing us where we need to be and us manifesting, what we need at that time. And I know obviously manifesting in the universe and a lot of things like that, there'll be people out there thinking, no, I don't want to think that way. But for anyone who's having those doubts, could you kind of talk about that a little bit more?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm very into manifesting and working with the energy of the universe. And of course, at that time when I found yoga, I had no idea that any of that existed. I didn't know what mindfulness was. I didn't know any of this world of spirituality. So to me, it was kind of a huge shock when I felt that gut tug. I was just kind of in the class doing these asana and not really knowing what I was doing, but I felt confident with it because I'm able-bodied and whatnot. So I was just kind of doing the things. And all of a sudden, there was just this overwhelming sense of peace that came over me, and almost like a voice in my head saying, you need to do this. And
I'm laughing because I've heard that voice before. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
Exactly. And those are such magic moments too, when you get that kind of hit of your intuition coming out and really kind of screaming in your face like, hey, you found it. This is it.
Right.
Yeah. And for me too, it was going to more of these classes and just getting deeper into the practice of yoga. I so immediately felt that it was more than just this physical activity that I was doing. It really, the healing it gave me right off the bat was so intense in the best way. And I knew if a practice like yoga, which at that time too, it was like the surface level of what yoga is, Sure. I've learned so much since then, but even just that kind of entry level to yoga, there was so much healing happening for me. And that gut tug was saying, you can't be selfish and keep this to yourself. You have to share this.
Right.
You have to share this with people. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
It did. And I think that's just such a great story already. I mean,
I know. It's like, I just love this.
I was like, wow.
I feel like we all three of us have had that exact same moment happen to us in different ways. So it's just always fun when you run across someone else who's had the same experience. So.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, what a great first guest. Thank you. But I think to your point as well, vulnerability is hugely important. I think for anyone who hasn't heard of Charlie Howard, she was a model who had an eating disorder, and she really struggled because of the expectations in the modeling community of you've got to be this size, and she was already at that time very, very small. Yet this modeling agency booted her because of the fact that she was, not in line with what they wanted. And she put a really vulnerable post about modeling and now runs this company called Squish, all just basically breaking apart those kind of unrealistic expectations. So I think to hear you talking about eating disorders, it's just adding to that narrative that needs to be said, I think.
Thank you. That really does mean a lot. I mean, I think it just comes to this story of whoever told us that we had to look a certain way, and, you know, how dare someone else tell me how I'm allowed to live in my body? You know, I think that's really what it comes down to, is this is my vessel. If I feel good, that's what matters. If I don't look like you want me to look, that's not really my problem. So yeah, I so appreciate that more voices are coming up in this work, and we're really starting to end the stigma around mental health. That's a huge thing.
Yes, love it. I think we've got a question next. I'll throw to Amanda for that one because I've already stolen some airtime.
So I didn't know if you were going somewhere else with that or not. But so can you explain? So we've talked about yoga a little bit, and I don't know if you want to explain any more about what yoga is too, because obviously it's not just the surface level of, you know, stretching and bending and blah, blah, blah. So there's obviously more to it than that. But I'm also curious to know about what Reiki is, because I have no idea what that is. So you could maybe explain that a bit, and maybe if whatever you want to explain about yoga would be great too.
Okay. Yeah, so Reiki to me is one of those practices.
Oh, Reiki. See, I didn't even say it right.
It's totally fine. It's not an English word, so no worries.
There you go.
Yeah, Reiki to me is one of those practices that so perfectly goes hand in hand with yoga, if you're willing to go kind of deeper into that self-work. So Reiki is energy work, and it comes from Japanese tradition.
Okay.
And so basically, as a Reiki practitioner, I am not really doing anything. I'm not giving you energy. I'm not taking away energy. I'm simply a conduit for, you know, source, the universe, God, whatever you choose to call it. Sure. I'm a conduit for that energy to come through and to, you know, kind of work its magic on whoever the person is who's laying on the massage table. So it's this really deep, transformative process, both on the receiving end and on the giving end of doing Reiki. And to me, as a practitioner, it's given me so much power to just trust and let go. I mean, as I mentioned before, I felt such a need for control in my life that it went to the extreme, you know, of a mental health condition. And so I felt that Reiki gave me that permission to do the opposite, to just trust and let go. And in fact, if you do try to control it, you're not going to succeed at it. You really have to let yourself just kind of be in the flow of energy. And there's something so incredibly powerful about that. Again, for you as the practitioner and for the one receiving, it's just, I mean, one of those other really deep healing practices that you can do. And I think yoga to me is really truly about that deep inner work and opening yourself up to do that and being willing to go through the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. And Reiki is just another tool in your toolbox to do that.
So is it a hands-on, like, are you laying hands on someone when you're doing it, or is it more like talking to them? Is it kind of like a guided meditation thing?
Sure. So traditionally, you are hovering your hands over the person. Maybe depending on the practitioner, you might, you know, touch their feet or touch their head or something like that. But it's different from massage in that you're not actually, you know, pushing on any pressure points or anything like that. You are, you know, kind of in their space, in their energy field, and just kind of hovering your hands over these areas that might need a little bit of movement or a little bit of healing. But traditionally, it is kind of just a quiet Zen space, just the same way that it would be if you got a massage. And maybe as you go, you talk about what's happening during the process, but it really is just one of those like deep self-care things.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Try it, but
highly recommend.
Let's all get Reiki.
Yeah.
I'll pronounce it correctly if I ever
there you go.
An appointment. But so when you said you're the conduit, so then would the universe, or however you want to call it, would that kind of guide you to the places that that person needs healing? Is that basically how it would work?
Yeah, exactly. It's really just this deep listening within you to let whatever needs to happen, and you will feel energetically. I mean, it's kind of like a magnet. It's this magnetism to a certain part of a person's body, or to a certain energy center. It's really closely integrated with the chakras, which is a whole other thing we could get into.
No,
but
it's going to get really complicated
yeah.
here.
But yeah, it's just kind of that deep listening and letting the pool happen to you.
I love spiritual practices like this. I've looked into Reiki, but I haven't had that yet. But just slowly over time, I'm getting more and more familiar with, just so many different things like the healing power of crystals and so many other things. But I just know there are so many skeptics out there, and so many of us, because I was one of them, just, so uptight and incapable of even opening yourself up to the idea of spiritual practices and how that could heal you. For those people out there sitting on the fence right now, what would you say to them?
Yeah, so first of all, I have my crystals here with me, so that's funny that you mentioned that.
Nice.
Yeah, I was definitely one of those people who at first, with certain topics, including crystals, at first I was like, are you sure about that? I don't know. That sounds a little out there.
Sure.
So I do think it is partially just a process. If you find the gateway that works for you, which for a lot of us is the practice of physical asana, of yoga, once you find that gateway, you tend to, over time, get a little more open to the other things. And to me as well, there's no risk in trying any of this. I mean, you're not going to get injured from doing Reiki or from holding a rock in your hand,
Right. Yeah.
So to me, it's almost a matter of, why not try it? And it might be very profound for you. And if it's not, then you can put the rock back down. It's not
exactly.
It could be this major life-shifting thing, or it could be just a whatever moment, but there's no really risk in doing it. And I've definitely encountered a lot of people in my time who have kind of talked down to me because of my beliefs in this kind of stuff, which is totally fine, because I know that's a reflection of them just not being ready for it. And I'm here when they are ready for it. So
right.
It's
that's a great attitude to have. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It's just kind of holding that space for them of like, you know what I do, I have these crystals, and when you're ready, I'm here.
I think that's a really good approach, actually. When people are ready, don't try and force them, because they're not gonna. That could have a detrimental effect. But I think as well, it's just doing new things. The other day with my crystals, I was holding them over some sage, and my girlfriend came in the room and was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm just recharging my crystals, blah blah blah." And like, it was interesting though, because at first I could see her very skeptical, like, "What are you?" I'm very confused. But then she was quite intrigued. So I think the more people that do it and talk about it, the more it becomes maybe an acceptable social practice that people might want to talk about. So I love it. It's great.
And with crystals in particular too, the thing that I tell people when they're skeptical is that it's just a piece of the earth. And if we know the earth has this electrical pulse to it, and we know that things on the earth are living and breathing, then why couldn't there be energy in this rock that I have? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you really think about it, it just makes total sense. It's just something that we were never taught, or at least not in the States. We're not taught that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously in Eastern country or Eastern cultures, they're taught that a little bit more, I'm sure. But yeah. And it goes back to what you talked about at the beginning. Of course, I keyed in on, because I think about expectations a lot. And, I'll put a plug in for the expectation gaps here. But so anyways, but it does go back to societal expectations of what a spiritual practice is. And so, it does take a lot of courage, I think, to kind of shut out all that noise and really listen to yourself and know that it's the right path for you, regardless of what anybody else has to say about it.
And to that point as well, I think there can also be a lot of expectations within the spiritual society as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I know. I mean, I am very grateful to know the community of people I know who are yoga practitioners and Reiki practitioners and all that good stuff. But there's definitely an ever-growing kind of stereotype of what a yogi is. And, you know, I mean, there's always been that kind of stereotype of a hippie and that kind of thing.
That's what I think of first still, honestly, even though I know better, but that is what comes to mind. Yeah,
exactly. So I think even within that space of a spiritual circle, you do still have to be aware, you know, if you don't do all the spiritual things, it's okay. You're still on your own journey and you're going in your own time, and the practices that are going to resonate with you are going to happen for you, and the ones that don't aren't going to happen for you, and that's going to be different for every person.
Just a quick question about yoga as well, Lydia. So I really want to do yoga, but I'd have to say I think I'm the least flexible man on the planet, and like I get nervous about looking silly or doing it wrong. Which is why, like, you know, if I was going to start, I'd probably want to do it at home by myself. But I imagine that's true of a lot of people because, again, we're always concerned with other people's views of us. What would you say to anyone out there like me who's a little bit unsure, I suppose?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a very common story that I hear, especially the I'm not flexible enough story, which always makes me chuckle a little bit. Yeah, I totally understand the intimidation factor of walking into a yoga studio, and I think that kind of goes back a little bit into that stereotype of a yogi that's coming about, in that we're a little bit, you know, high and mighty, and we're here doing our like crazy handstands and things like that. But I think one of the factors of that, if you are going to practice in a physical space, is to find a space that feels comfortable to you and find a teacher that feels comfortable to you. And that's not going to happen right away. So give yourself the space and grace to experiment and explore a little bit and find the person, the place that resonates with you. We are in a time right now where obviously a lot of yoga is digital and online, which is really awesome for those people who do feel a little bit self-conscious. You can practice at home and you can really get to slow down and get to know the basics first, which, you know, if you pop into a random yoga class, there's no guarantee that the teacher is going to be able to give you the attention that you need. So if you do go to a physical class, see that it is labeled for beginners. That's a big thing. You want to set yourself up for success in that way. If you're practicing online, take it slow. Don't feel like you have to be rushing into these crazy postures that you see on Instagram. Really go at your own pace, be open-minded. And just like we were talking about with other spiritual practices, like what's the worst that could happen? Just try it out, see what you like, experiment with different teachers and different styles. And I mean, even just the styles of yoga, there's so many different avenues you could take just with the physical practice of yoga. So really see that as an opportunity to explore rather than, you know, getting overwhelmed with all your options and just enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the hard part, especially for people like Adam and I, who kind of like, we kind of like things in boxes. So Adam used to be a banker and I used to be an accountant. So we kind of like things in little boxes. So it can be intimidating sometimes to like try a lot of things because we always feel like, oh, we have to find the right thing right away. So I think that's very encouraging for you to say that it is okay to try a class and not enjoy it and try a different one, and maybe you don't enjoy that one either, but if you really are committed to it, just keep trying and you'll find one. And I'm also really curious. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. I think that goes back to kind of this instant gratification culture we have as well. You kind of want the first thing to be the best thing, and that's not always how it happens. And even along the way, I've definitely been to yoga classes that I didn't enjoy in kind of, you know, a year after I'd been practicing or whatever it may be. So it's just this always fluctuating thing that, to me, that's really fun, that you're always just kind of experimenting and seeing, you know, discovering people who inspire you, discovering what doesn't work for you. All of that, again, comes back to that self-exploration.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
What I really like there, though, is just you talking about expectations. Because I think that's a really big thing. I was listening to Breenie Brown's podcast the other day on the FFT, or effing first time. And just when you basically look at doing something for the first time, and this is maybe something I've got to remember as well, is it's going to suck. You're going to suck at it. So, you know, when I try and do yoga for the first time, I'm sure I'm going to really struggle and things like that. But I guess it's setting that expectation that you're not going to be the super master who's going to instantly get it right and do everything in the right way. You're probably going to struggle, but that's half of the course, really. You've just got to expect that it's going to be hard in the beginning, and along the way you'll find that. So I think that's a really important lesson. And, you know, I spoke about FFTs the other day, and I've already forgotten that lesson. So, you know, how easy is that?
Yeah, you definitely need those constant reminders for sure. And people who have been practicing yoga for a long time, I challenge you to find that beginner's mind again and really, you know, find that kind of spark and nervousness and excitement of being a beginner and trying something new, and recognizing that some poses aren't going to work for you and some will, and, you know, just letting whatever will be.
Yeah, that's great. So, Lydia, why are things like yoga and Reiki and you know, breathing, why are they so important, especially now with everything happening in the world? Like, why is wellness so important?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it while you were introducing me here at the start, but I truly believe that having healthy individuals on this planet leads to a healthy collective, a healthy society on this planet. And that is so important now more than ever. I mean, obviously we're in a pandemic, so we need our health now more than ever. And there's just a lot of shift and change happening in the world that we all need to kind of cope with and ride those waves together. And if we don't have that baseline of our own personal wellness and that ability to kind of go inward and know ourselves, then it's going to be a lot harder to come together in support of a healthy planet. So to me, having these baseline practices to support your health and wellness is so crucial. And especially I've found that a lot of people, at least in Western culture, have a hard time being with themselves and being still and being quiet. And to me, that's one of the deepest practices that comes from yoga and breathing and Reiki and meditation and whatever it is that you like to practice, is just that patience and compassion to be with yourself, as scary as that may be at first. I mean, we all have our crap to deal with, right?
Sure.
So being able to just kind of sit with that and let yourself breathe through it and work through it and move through it is so important. And then when we have a planet that's filled with people who are breathing and doing yoga and feeling happy and fulfilled in their own bodies, just imagine what the world would look like if each of us was doing that. Right. To me, that's a future that I want to see. And that's a vision that I keep in mind every single day when I'm doing this work, is thinking about our human potential and what we could create for this planet.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, I think that's the way to deal with the collective problem, one person at a time, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people get discouraged in that they think as one person they can't make a difference, or they think that doing these practices or doing self-care is selfish. But really, I see it as the least selfish thing that you could possibly do. When you're taking care of yourself, then you can take care of others. When you have compassion for yourself, you have compassion for the planet and every living being on it. So to me, it is actually imperative to be doing this work. And I don't just say that because it's my lifestyle and what I do for work, but I really truly believe that you need to have that fulfillment on an individual level before you can take that out into the world.
Yeah. Thank you. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
Well, and I guess I would add to that too, just a message just to people out there. You've found fulfillment through yoga or through these spiritual practices. Not everybody's going to find fulfillment that way either. So it's like, that's not the message that we're trying to convey either. Although it is definitely, like, I'm never going to be that fulfilled from yoga. Right. I do practice yoga. I try like 5 days a week usually. But, and I love it. And it's helped me so much to calm my mind. It's helped me even in my day-to-day, like when I start stressing, I can recognize it right away and I can calm myself down.
Mm-hmm.
But it's never going to be my thing. You know, my thing is helping people become deliberate thinkers, because I'm a thinker and I love to think things through and I love to analyze information. That's my thing. So just to throw that out there too, that everybody has to find their own thing that brings them peace and that brings meaning to their life.
Yeah, I love that. We definitely all have our different pathways, and
Right.
we need to have our different pathways for
Right.
things to work in a synchronized way. And it really comes back to me. It always comes back to exploration and trying things out, trial and error, until you find what lights you up.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of what's missing from our culture too, is that everybody tends to think everyone has to fit into the same box.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we don't all have to be the same. We don't want to be the same. That would not do
No.
anybody any good if we were all the same. So it's being open to that fact that other people find their way in a different way than you do. And that's a great thing.
Yeah, I love that.
And that kind of seems to me like what yoga kind of does, because it allows you to practice in your own way. Practice yoga in your own way.
Yeah, I find yoga to be a deeply personal practice. Even if I'm in a studio full of other people, I'm very focused on what's happening inside and on my mat. And I think that's something that can be so powerful. I mean, especially if people are starting their practice of yoga at home online right now, they really, I mean, they have distractions around them for sure. I mean, just your phone alone can distract you away from the practice. But really giving yourself that space alone for a moment just to really get familiar with these movements. And when those shifts come up in your mind and your body, that might be kind of alarming at first. You're giving yourself that space on your own to kind of recognize that and face that before, you know, you go into a classroom full of people.
Right, 100%. Yeah.
So Lydia, can you give us a bit of an insight into like what your daily routine would be? You know, what are your non-negotiable things that you would do to keep yourself in a really good headspace?
Yeah, I love this question. My daily routine is definitely something that I stick to quite fervently, especially my morning routine. I find that kind of makes or breaks my day. So I'm a firm believer that if you consume before you create, you probably aren't going to create that day.
Oh,
and
that's
it
great. I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good, yeah.
It puts you in a completely different mind space. So for me, my day always starts with no phone for usually about an hour. I start by going outside and just kind of soaking in the fresh air and hopefully the sunlight, but you know, the rain if it's raining, and,
Right.
and just giving myself that space out in nature first thing in the morning. That really grounds me, which is super helpful. I'm one of those people who, when I wake up, my brain is on. So I really need something to kind of bring me back to earth and give me that presence before I move on with my day. So usually I start with that time outside, and then I'll do some mixture of a movement practice, meditation, journaling, manifestation, whatever I feel I need in that morning. It's always some kind of mix of those things in some kind of order, but whatever I need to focus on that day, whatever my body's telling me is what I do. And then from there, I'm able to be in this space where I'm nurtured first. And then I can go out and create and make things for other people. And I always give myself that space for creation first. As I said, if I consume first before I create, not, you know, a very productive day. Not that production is everything, but I do really value creative time. So I try to give that a lot of space first. And then all the more kind of administrative tasks of my day go towards the end of the day when I'm feeling tired. And then before bed, I try to, you know, be away from blue light and all that kind of stuff. I will say I'm not as consistent with my sleep routine, but that's where I get to practice forgiveness with myself, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of my own little recipe for success that I find. Morning time, I'm a morning person anyway, so morning time is super crucial for me, and then that helps my day unfold in just the perfect way that it needs to.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Create before you consume. It's like, that's so simple.
That's so
but
great.
I know.
Right.
I'm like, I want to get that on a t-shirt or something.
I've written it down. Typical nerdy PhD student. I'm like, I need to take notes so that I can remember it later. But it's so true. I think
I know.
we all consume straight away. I'm terrible for it. I really need to break that habit, because as soon as I get out of bed, let's check my phone. Why?
Yeah.
Take that time to wake up and actually create, I suppose. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
You've just given Adam permission.
There you go.
I'll chuck to you, Amanda, because I keep asking all the questions. Sorry.
No, I thought you were turning it over to me, so I was just making sure. So kind of to wrap things up here, getting toward the end of our time, what would you say to people out there who feel that knot in their stomach, like they're settling for an unfulfilling life, but they're scared to take that jump? They're scared to make a change in their life. They're scared of being out of control, like you were at one point in your life. What is one message that you would like to leave them with?
So I think for me, something that really motivates me to get out of that place of stuckness is knowing that growth does not happen in your comfort zone. And as scary as it may be, or as uncomfortable as it may be, you have to get out of those bubbles that you've created for yourself. And what's the worst that can happen if you do it? I mean, I think so often we're prone to catastrophize things right away and just go straight to worst case scenario rather than daydreaming about the best case scenario and really envisioning this amazing future for us. Rather than, to me, it's so much scarier to stay in that place of stuckness and to feel that, to feel that heaviness of being unfulfilled. And that to me is so much scarier than bursting out of the bubble and just trying and failing and succeeding and letting whatever happen. But that bubble has become really the worst thing to me. And I know once you get out of that bubble, once you make that shift out of your comfort zone, it's going to be scary every time still. But after that first leap, you have a little more confidence. And then after that second leap, you have a little more confidence. So it's just kind of building one on top of the other until you're ready to really burst out into your full potential, which is what the world needs right now.
Absolutely. Yes. I think that's what we're all working toward, is to help people realize their full potential. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
Well, I love that. We'll move to the non-optional questions, and there's a good one in here, which I'm keen to hear. What is your favorite Disney movie? So for those who don't know, Lydia's a big fan of Disney. That's what I can ascertain from Instagram.
I wondered why you put that question in there. I'm like, that's kind of
you're like, question. What is this?
No, I love that is so obvious in my persona that I'm obsessed with Disney. Yeah, so this is a hard question because there's obviously so many great Disney movies. But my favorite movie of all time since I've been a kid is the original Alice in Wonderland, the animated version. And I think, being an adult now and having time to reflect back on when I was 4 years old and would watch it on repeat every single day, I think just as someone with such an active imagination, that movie was right up my alley. Yeah. And I still love it so much. I have way too much merchandise from that movie for sure. But yeah, that one is definitely my favorite of all time. Recently, I don't know if you have had the chance to see this one yet, but Onward came out, and that is in the running to be in my top 3 favorite movies of all time.
What is that one about again? I recognize the name, but...
Yeah, so Onward is in kind of a mystical land where there's like trolls and unicorns and wizards and things like that. And it's these two brothers who go on a quest.
Yeah, so it's funny because the one guy in it, he's like an elf or something, I think, but he kind of looks like my stepdaughter's boyfriend. So all of a sudden I'm picturing that, and I'm like, oh, that's what that movie is.
Well, that's
Not in a
awkward.
bad way. It's not a bad thing, but he just does.
In a
He
good way.
reminds me of him.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to have to look that movie up. But
Yeah.
this is the
You,
best, well, not the best part, but one of the great parts of having a 4-year-old daughter is that we get to watch Disney movies, and I can be like, oh, you know, I'll put this on for Rose, but deep down I'm like, I need to see this movie. So,
yeah, 4
I-
rows. Okay.
Right.
and I don't think she's seen Alice in Wonderland, so I'm totally psyched to actually watch that with her. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I will just precursor. When I saw Onward for the first and second time, I cried pretty much the whole movie. So just to let you know, that's how much it impacted me. It was
Oh,
very, yeah. And it's not just, you know, it's not even just the main story of brotherhood and all of that kind of stuff, but it really, to me, got to some of these deeper messages that we've been talking about, you know, collective health and the world needing to change in a more magical way.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, Disney gets deep, man.
Yeah.
No, it's when you're least expected.
Frozen.
Right.
Like
Right.
from the first Frozen to the second one, I felt the second one. We can talk about Disney. This is another
Yeah.
podcast. But you know, Frozen 2 was very, very serious, and it was all to do with nature, and it just kind of was a little bit more serious in tone, which I think is a good thing for kids. It was still fun, but it had a serious undertone there, which I think was really important.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious, who's somebody that you really are inspired by, and why?
Yeah, I'm inspired by a lot of people. At risk of sounding too cliche, I will have to give credit to both my parents for this one, though. And I don't even want to narrow it down to one of them because they've both given me so much in equal amounts, I think. And I have no complaints about the way that they raised me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think from my dad, he's just such a generous person and just that kind of person that you want to be around. You know, he's really friendly, he's really giving, he's really good at communicating, very creative as well. So I definitely admire all of those traits in him and try to embody that within myself too.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom really gave me the gift of, well, first of all, Disney. But then also, my mom always really prioritized travel in our lives and giving me and my sister those experiences, which have changed my life. I would not be who I am today if I hadn't traveled as much as I have. So I thank her greatly for that and have that same priority in my life now. And she's just one of the most resilient, determined women that I know. And I'm just constantly inspired by both of them. And I'm very lucky to have them in my life.
That's awesome. Well done, Mum and Dad, if you're listening. Well done. And our last non-optional question as well. So, you know, I think now's a good time to learn a lot of new skills, given the pandemic shut down society as we know it. But in the next year, what's a skill that you'd like to learn?
Mm-hmm. This is such a tough question for me because I always want to be learning things. One of my, I guess this should be popped into my daily routine as well. Every single day, I make space to learn something new, whether that's a podcast or a training or reading or whatever it may be. So I have a long list, but I will narrow it down for you. Right now, something that I'm really getting interested in is moon tracking. And for me, that really, I mean, I'm very interested in, of course, nature and natural cycles and how we as human animals fit into those natural cycles. So with this moon tracking, it's not just kind of getting in tune with that. It's also getting in tune with my feminine energy, which I think is really easy for us to get disconnected from, especially in the state we are right now. And it's just a way to really tap into my inner wisdom and just another tool to bring that inner work and that exploration into my days. So I'm really getting interested in that.
I've never heard of that, so that's pretty
Neither
awesome.
have I.
I know.
There you go.
Okay, tick the box.
We're just learning all kinds of stuff here today.
Perfect.
I know, that's what it's all about.
Exactly. That's awesome. So thank you so much, Lydia. If our listeners / viewers want to, find out more about you, your podcast, The Wandering Yogi, where can they go to find you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and holding this space. I really appreciate it. Obviously, I love to talk about this stuff, so thank you so much. If people want to get to know me a little bit more and the work I'm doing, the best place to go would probably be Instagram, which is just at Lydia Willig Yoga, super simple. And then my website is Earthwalker Yoga, and that's where I really post about all the services that I provide, and I have a blog on there as well. I also keep that updated with my podcast, which is called A Wandering Yogi, and that is a super exciting new project that I just launched, and it's just a way for me to share stories of other people who are really passionate about yoga and self-transformation and all the good stuff we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are kind of my three main sources of how people can find me.
Awesome. We'll definitely get links to all of those in the description.
Thank you.
So yeah, absolutely. No, we appreciate you being here as our first guest. We don't know what the heck we're doing, and you were willing to be the first one, so
I know.
this was awesome. I mean, I don't think it could have went any better. So
oh, thank you.
I think Adam would agree. I'm putting words in Adam's mouth now.
No. We're in tune today. And look, I just encourage.
We really do appreciate it.
Yeah. I just
so.
encourage any of our listeners, go out there and look into this stuff more. I hope you guys have got as excited as I have, because there's just some great wellness activities that we should do more of like this. So if you guys enjoyed the show today, as I said at the start, please follow us. We'll put some links up at the end. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would love some support on Coffee, because we want better audio equipment for you guys. But yeah, please as well give us any feedback. We really appreciate it. But a big thank you to Lydia once again, and I think we'll wrap it up.
All right.
Yay.
Cheers to not settling.
Cheers to not settling.
See you guys.
Bye.